My name is Enoch Bradshaw. I'm an AR VR developer and artist, and I'm not a lizard person. You can find me on my website. You can get a hold of me on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. Shoot me a message or something. But let's get started. So what is Unity? What can it do? Can it do things? Let's find out. So Unity is basically it's a game engine, but it can do more than just games, right? It can create 3D applications, construction applications, animation, engineering. It's used for a variety of mediums. It can do so much more. So now that we know what Unity is, let's get into kind of how we got to where we are. Unity started as a game company, actually, at first. It was a game company called Over the Edge, and when Over the Edge's first game failed, they saw some promise in the tools that they built to make that game. So they quickly pivoted to focus on making game development accessible to everybody. So from there, they won a bunch of awards. They were named the runner-up of the best use of Mac OS X graphics at the 2006 Apple Design Awards. When the iPhone came out in 2007, Unity became one of the first platforms to support it, so they quickly became known as the go-to for mobile app development there. And so from then on, they just kept adding support for more and more platforms and growing. And on this last slide, I have just a few titles that you may know that also utilize Unity. So there's Cuphead, Rick and Morty, Virtual Reality, Escape from Tarkov, just to name a few. So it's used all over the place, from indie developers to AAA game studios to even animation and architecture. And I put this quote from the CEO just to kind of facilitate what they do, or why they do what they do, why they're trying to make it accessible to kind of the world and make game development just an easier path to take. So now I'm going to get to it. The big question, which I know some of you are thinking it, all right? And I won't hear any more of it. I'll just squash it right now, all right? So it's going to probably go something like this. What about Unreal Engine? Which game engine is the best? You, probably. Unity, me, probably. Isn't it different for everyone? How can you be so concrete in your answer? It just is. I'm pretty sure it depends on what you're doing. I'm not going to take the word of some bozo in a ramen suit. This isn't... Hold up. This is not... Okay, I'm not sure what's... That's... Okay, this is quite enough of that. That's enough of that. The truth is, basically, it depends, obviously. There are plenty of other game engines out there as well. Unity and Unreal can do both the same things. It's all about personal preference, whatever fits what you're trying to do. But because you keep begging for it, I'm going to go ahead and give a side-by-side comparison. So there's trade-offs. Unity's community is a little bit larger. Unreal's smaller. This is based off of their Reddit presence. And then Unreal has C++ scripting, which is generally a little better, but it's just a trade-off here and there, but it all depends on what you're trying to do. These last two, the Focus and the Excels at, are just based on my personal experience, so take those at a grain of salt. They don't really have a side-by-side comparison online, so I made mine to reflect that. But here are some reasons why you, a .NET developer, might want to choose Unity. So in this corner, we have the one, the only C#. And then it's easier for beginners. We got free assets. We got video tutorials. We got forums full of answers to questions that you haven't even asked yet. So super easy to get started. It's a great community, very active. So let's dive into it a little more. I'm just going to take you hand in hand frolic through the fields of Unity's UI real quick, if you don't mind. So you'll obviously want to download the Unity Hub and download your correct version. But that won't help you until you have these slides. So you can just look it up or wait till these slides come out. So basically what we got here is the, on the right side here, this is the inspector, and you use this to manipulate properties. You add components, scripts, and you assign references to other game objects right here. This down here in the bottom, you can see highlighted in blue. This is your project window, and you'll use that for storing assets that you create or import to your project. On the left side here, we have the hierarchy, and it's a representation of what's in your scene. And in this empty scene, all we have is a main camera and a directional light. But you'll see tabs to indicate inheritance on there. And then lastly, I've got the toolbar up here, and the hand moves you around the scene. The rest of those options just kind of manipulate the objects in the 3D space, whether it's moving them around, twisting them, scaling them up. And then you've got your play, pause buttons up at the top. So that's all I got for the slides. We'll dive into those more deeply when I finally stop talking and start doing. And we'll see these tools in action. We'll go a little more in depth. And so Levi quit snoozing over there. We'll do a live presentation. I see you snoozing.
I'm reading the chats for you.
Yeah, I'm just joking. Okay, so as a C# .NET developer, there's some things you should know about scripting, and other shit that makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about. The first thing I want to mention is instantiation. So you don't use instantiation the way you normally would want to. Instead, you use this GameObject.addComponent and then whatever class name you want to use. And the reason for this is because Unity has these tight ties between game objects and your scripts. And so in order to instantiate that script, we need it to be attached to this game object. So we want to use the game object and add the component that way. And that's the reason why that's the way it is. And then I just had a funny little tweet about that. It's illegal, but they won't call the police on you. So the next thing I want to talk about is constructors. So you shouldn't implement constructors or call constructors. Instead, Unity has this built-in method that you'll see called the start method. And inside the start method, that's where you'll do everything that you would do inside of your constructor. That's where you'll do your setup and your assignments and stuff like that. I don't have a funny tweet for this one, but it is a good segue to my next segment, which is mono behaviors. So mono behavior gets in every script that you add. Well, not every, but most scripts that you add are going to inherit from mono behavior. And they give you access to tons of different methods that we won't go into here, but you can read about it in the documentation. But by default, you'll see this start method, which it's called the first frame. And then you'll see this update method. These two are scaffolded for you when you create a script. The update is called once per frame. So Unity handles the game loop for you, and it constantly loops every frame. And if you want to do something every time that frame is, or every time every frame, then you'll throw it in here. So let's go. Little Mario joke for you. All right. Now we're going to go to the live coding section. Okay, so more or less I've got this empty scene here. And the first thing that I want to do here is I want to add a 3D object. So I'm going to go right click over here, 3D object. I want to add a cube to my scene. And so it adds it. It didn't add it at 0, 0, so I'm going to 0 it out. And that's over here in the inspector. I changed the X, Y, and Z over here. So cool, it's zeroed out, it's looking good. We can see it in our scene. It's great, but that's all we can do. So let's do some more to it. I actually want this to be a little bit bigger. I want it to be 20 by 20. And this is going to be kind of our gameplay area. I'm going to take a drink real quick. Okay.
Do you want to save questions for the end, or can we get around to questions?
Yeah, I can give a round of questions now.
So Fred has a question. So like the whole no explicit instantiation is for anything that's a game object type of thing?
Yeah, you can do instantiation. You can mix like the regular way of doing it and using a game object. But if it's attached to a game object, that's when you don't want to do the instantiation.
So the add component would be for something that's going to be directly interacting with your game world, while the standard new object would be more appropriate for something that's just running in the background, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so. If it doesn't, if it doesn't need to inherit from mono behavior, then you're fine with doing the regular stuff. I've done that before in some projects where I needed to create like just a factory file, or a factory script. But yeah, are there any others?
No, that was it. So basically, if you inherit from mono behavior, you just can't use the new keyword in those instances.
Yeah, it's frowned upon in the documentation.
Cool.
Okay, so we got our play area, and now we want to create our character. And I'm gonna open this up to suggestions. Anybody have any suggestions on what our character should be? Did I hear generic sphere? Are you serious? Okay. So we'll add our generic sphere here. I actually have the idea for the game already. It's going to be a dot, and we're going to get this dot inside a net, and it's going to be called .NET Meetup meets det not det. .NET Meetup meets net.game. Yeah, it's a mouthful. Okay, so I'm just gonna zero those out real quick, and so here's a cool thing that I want to show you guys. You can turn on, you make sure you switch the orientation to global over here, and then you can turn on this grid system. And so now when I move things, they'll just move upon a grid. So now we got kind of a character and a land to play around in, but they're looking kind of boring. So I'm just going to throw some pre-made materials. I've got this .NET purple that I made and this SGF Web Devs blue. And for whatever reason, the lighting looks really bad in this, but I'm just going to roll with it. So then I want to move this camera around a little bit. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys about kind of the motion. So we've got the right click lets you turn around, and then the middle mouse wheel lets you grab kind of this hand wheel and move around the area. So I'm utilizing those while I move this camera around. And I kind of want a bird's eye view of what's going on over here. So I'm going to tilt it more. I'm going to move it up, move it back a little bit. And that looks okay. That's not That's not terrible. I want to maybe turn this light up a little brighter because it's looking weird. Okay, so that's fine and dandy, but they both don't do anything. We can check in the, we can play it, but we've already seen it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to move this up, and we see that there's no gravity attached to this. By default, it has this sphere collider, and a collider is your hitbox, your hit area. But there's no gravity applied to this, and so in order to that, we're going to add a component over here. And what we want is a rigid body. And this will add gravity. So it should be good to go now. See there, it fell, but it looks a little weird because it just kind of falls and is flat. So I wanted to add a physics material, and I just created that with right-click on the project panel over here, and then create new physics material. But I already have it created over here, so I'm just going to drag it on to the sphere collider. And now we got a ball that bounces. It still looks a little weird, but it'll do for now. So we have a ball that bounces. I want to be able to move this platform with the keyboard. So let's work on that real quick. So I'm in order to add a script, I can either go here to new script and type it in, or if I search for the script I want that doesn't exist, it'll automatically populate with the name. So I want this to be called the tilting script, and then it just populates in there. Create and add, and it'll take just a second, but now it's added there. You can right click, edit script, and I switched in my menu what to use, so I'm using Visual Studio Code instead of the regular Visual Studio, but either one's fine. So here's the scaffold methods I was telling you guys about. We don't need this start for right now, so I'm just going to get rid of it. And what we'll do is inside of the update, because what we're trying to do now is we're trying to check for anytime I press the key, we want to make sure we are listening for that. And Unity, by default, you want to stay out of the update as much as you can if it's not needed, because it's code that gets run every frame. So if you're piling stuff in there that's not needed, it's going to slow you down. But this is needed because there's no methods that get called when the keyboards are pressed. So we're going to listen for them in this update. So I'm gonna type this out real quick, and then I'm gonna explain it afterwards because it's a little bit. If input dot get axis horizontal is less than 0.1. Okay.
Could you bump the font size up in your editor?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's Control Plus, right?
Yeah. And you can do, I think, Control B to close the sidebar. Temporarily.
Control B. Okay. I can move this over a little more, or I can just full screen it. Cool. So what we're doing here is we're taking the input. Unity gives us these axes, and there's the horizontal and the vertical. I'm just going to show you that real quick. In the project settings, edit project settings, we've got this input manager, these axes. So we've got the horizontal, and what it is it's a way to allow kind of different mappings. So you can map a game controller, you can have it mapped straight to the keyboard, and it's going to be a value of 1 to -1. So of how far you're pushing over the joysticks, and so negative is going to be left and positive is right, I think. And then the same for the vertical and the up and down. So we're going to access these and find out, it's already mapped to my mouse or my keyboard. So we're going to grab the horizontal and check if it's less than 0.1. And this is just an arbitrary number. It can be 0, but I want it to be 0.1 so that I keep it straight, whether it's negative or positive. So if we're pressing this is going to be the right button. Sorry. If we're pressing the right button, we want to tilt the game object. So this is another thing. Because this tilting script is attached to a game object, Unity gives us access to things like game object. And we don't have to do this dot anything. This will just work. We'll have access to the game object we're attached to. We want to get the transform of that game object, and I want to rotate it. I want to rotate it X, Y. I want to rotate on the Z, and I think I want a negative value here, and I got this flipped. Okay, so if that error goes away, we should be good. So then we can save that and reload our scene. First time you click on Unity, it'll instantly load up your changes, and then plus, and it's working, but not exactly how we want it to. So we want to, yeah. So we want to add some constraints there. So let's go back to the code, and let's attach. Let me show you real quick why we want it. So I just went in here and made sure, like, okay, so I want negative Z value, and let's see. I don't really want it to go past like negative 20 on the Z axis. So that's kind of how I figured that out. So then we'll go back to this, and we'll just add an AND condition onto this. So if we're pressing the right button and the game object dot transform dot Z, rate the rotation. I need the rotation first. Transform dot rotation dot Z. If that is bigger than negative 0.20, then we want to rotate it, but if it's not, then we'll just, forget it. Okay, so now let's see if that, I'm going to test that worked, and it did. But now we can't go back because we don't have that implemented. So I just want to pull this out to make it a little easier on myself. So I'm going to create a function for that. Void. Well, I'm just gonna copy over what I have. So I just created a little function to do this translate. That way we can use it across each button that we want to use. So we want to use this tilt left and right, and we want to give it a -1. But I want to create a just a private variable over here, float, and just have a rotation factor so I can change that easier on the fly. So because this is a float, we're gonna have to typecast it with the F at the bottom, or in the back of it. I'm not really sure. Does that? It's been a second since I was in C#. Does that happen in C# where it just defaults to double, or is this a Unity specific issue?
I don't remember. I think what you're doing there is correct, though.
Okay.
It'll still work. I can't remember if the syntax is different now or not.
Okay.
Seems right to me.
So, ooh, that's not what I want. So I just want to take in this this factor. So now we got this kind of built out a little cleaner. I'm just going to copy and paste the rest of these. And it's just more of the same. We've got our right, left, up and down, and then build out this second method for the X instead of the Z. And so now if we try this, we should have all of the movement code working. So let's test that out. All right, so we can move in all sorts of different directions. Kind of cool, but the ball can still move off the edge. So
Also, maybe it's just because it looks funny from back here, but it also seems like your little platform is warping a little bit as you do that.
yeah, the I'm at a bird's eye view on, and there's no frame of reference when you're looking at it. So in my final product, I have some blocks in the background to really make you aware that, oh, the background's not moving at all. It's just the platform.
So it's just an optical illusion because the background is just a gray abyss.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And we can look at that when I show that a little later. So the other thing I kind of want to do, how am I doing on time? I got plenty of time. So I want to build some walls up here. We'll just create a cube, kind of zero it out. And yes, Levi.
Any reason why it's not 0 by default?
So
just kind of like putting where your mouse cursor is?
So I'm not sure. I think that's a new issue that I'm having. It usually does zero out in my experience, but I just downloaded 2020, and so there's some quirks I have to work out.
Cool.
But yeah,
Settings file somewhere.
it could be. So I think I want this 5 high and 20 across and 0.2. Man, those shadows are not doing me right at all. I don't know what's up with this lighting. It looks a lot better in the other version. I might switch over there, but I want to keep building this from scratch, so we'll keep plugging away and then switch over when it gets a little later. So right now I'm just building out these walls, duplicating with Control D, and then turning it around and making sure that
Do these just automatically connect to the platform, or do we have to tell it that to move those with the platform?
we do have to tell that. That's what I wanted to get to next. So I'm going to build this last wall, and then I was going to show you it not working, but you've already discovered that it won't, so I'm just going to show you how to make it work.
I mean, if you want to demonstrate that so that the Twitch channel can see that happening,
Okay.
may as well.
So it's moving independently of our walls. So what I want to do is I want to create kind of an empty game object. and name this I didn't want to zoom into that. I want to rename it. And I'm just going to call this the play area, for lack of a better word. And I'll just take all of these and make them all children of this object. So now we're going to play, but we're still going to see an issue. It's still independent. And the reason for that is because we did make it under this play area, but the script is attached to this cube. So to get rid of a script, we can right-click, remove component, and we can move it over to this play area instead. So we add that tiling script. Now everything should be good to go on that end. But you can see this is way not correct. And you'll see this position is out of bounds. I forgot to zero it out before I created it. So I think if I zero it out now, it'll still cause some issues. Yeah, because it'll move it around, because it'll have these not be zeroed out. So I would, yeah, that's going to cause some issues. So what, instead of doing that, I'll just do it the right way the first time and zero this out. Yeah, I'll have to look at the settings after this, make sure there's some reason why it doesn't automatically zero out to begin with. But now everything should be a little bit better, tilting on the, well, okay. I think because I Control Z'd, I also forgot to, or I Control Z too far, so the script component isn't attached to that anymore. Should be good now. Cool. Everything's a little better now. All right. So I want to. That's all fine and dandy, right? But it's not really a game unless there's a win condition. So I wanted to create kind of a win condition, and before that, I want to make it kind of hard, a little bit. Actually, I'll create a win condition first. So I want to move this over. I want to change it to kind of 18, so it fits. It has a little hole over here. I'm going to change the colors of these real quick, and I'm going to change the lighting as well to show the show that corner a little better. These shadows shouldn't be this dark, but there's some issue that, of course, an issue shows up when I'm trying to live present. Okay, that should be fine. So with it being the .NET meetups meets the net.game, we have our dot, but we gotta build our net. So I made a really garbage net prefab that I made in Blender, just using the Boolean on two isospheres. So that's over here in this. So I'm gonna pull that out, and you see it has a hole in it. It's just really garbage net that I made. So we want to tilt that the right direction, which is over this way, sort of. And I want to make sure that kind of the that's on. Can move this.
Attached to the play area object so that it rotates with it.
It should, exactly. Perfect. So I'm just going to scale this up a bit. Nope. So we get a little bit of a kind of a large net, and then I grabbed some materials from the Unity Asset Store. If you want to search for all your materials, there's this handy dandy little all materials, and it just shows you every material in your project. Super useful. I thought that this one kind of looked best. So now we got our net, but if I were to play this right now, obviously it's not attached to the play area, so it wouldn't wouldn't move with it. Now it's going to move with it, but your ball will just fall right through it. And that's because it didn't come attached with the collider that it needs. And so on the ball, there's a sphere collider on these. There's box colliders. We want a mesh collider. I don't see it, so I'm just going to type in mesh collider. Yeah. And so you might think that, okay, I added a mesh collider, should work fine, right? Wrong. So the first thing that you need to do when adding a mesh collider is to add the mesh. And I ran into this a lot when I was practicing it. So now you can see those green lines, and that's a good sign. And now everything should be good to go. We can test this out real quick. Let's move this over, and the camera's kind of wonky, but you can see it. It's bouncing around in that net down there. We can move the camera back, make sure that's a little more visible.
I wonder if we also can attach the camera to the ball object so that it stays centered on the ball, or something like that.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Another thing I wanted to show you is how to create prefabs. And so this isn't really necessary to what we're doing right now, but if you want to instantiate different objects and different pre-made kind of game items, you need it to be a prefab. And in order to create a prefab, which is like your blueprint for objects, you just take the object you made and you pull it down into the project window, and now it became a prefab. Now anytime I make an edit to this, I can double click and change the prefab itself. I can move stuff around and save it, and that'll reflect out in the scene. Again, it's not necessary for what we're doing because we don't want to like instantiate this a couple times, but any kind of items that need to be moved around. Okay, so we got our net. Now I want to create kind of a goal area. How am I doing on time? 7:35? Yeah, we're good. So in order to make this goal area, I'm going to create just a cube. 3D object, create a cube. I'm going to move this cube. I'm going to zero it out first. That's not 0. So we'll move this cube over here. Scale it up some. And right now, the cube has its box collider, so it won't let the sphere pass through it. We can make it just be kind of a hitbox area by checkboxing this is trigger. So now it's a hitbox area. We just uncheck this mesh renderer, and so now we have an area where we can check if this ball is in this sphere area. And if that happens, we can run some scripts. But before we run that script, we need to have another kind of element, this UI that says kind of what you're doing. Where it's basically we're going to create a you win screen, right? And so we want to create the UI for that, and then we want to dynamically set it to active or set it to false. So we'll go over to UI. I believe it's either canvas or panel. I can't. I think we want a panel. UI panel. Okay, so it automatically gives you this panel. It's kind of hard to navigate because it's so huge. So you'll there's this 2D button. You'll switch it to 2D mode and scroll out a bit, and it'll show you where everything's at. From there, you can create, other UI elements. We want some text saying, You win. I'm just going to keep this simple and just say you win and have a restart button. So we want to move around the placement of it and kind of bump up the size. And then the second thing we want is that UI button. We can move this, make this bigger. And there's some sizing, sizing things that I should be using, but for this demo, I'm not gonna mess with it. So inside this button, it's got, these components pre-built. The image you can change. Obviously, you can change the color to be whatever you want. And inside this button, it's, yeah, Levi?
Can you pull like one of your prefab colors onto that?
Yeah.
Like the SGF devs color that you
Yeah,
use?
I could pull a material on that. I think I can just drag it and drop it. Oh no, I can't. But I can put it in here. It looks like it doesn't work.
No.
I haven't tried doing that before. So I'm sure there's a. Yeah,
It's
I'm
just
sure.
a basic color picker, not the same thing as the material. It's designed to wrap it around a 3D object.
Right. I'm sure there's a way to get it to work, but
It's good to know that, though.
Render a 3D button instead.
Okay. So on this button, it has inherited this text object. It says button. We're going to change it to restart. And I'm going to scale that up a little bit. So now we got our basic UI. Cool. So first things first, I want to disable this from viewing, because otherwise it's just going to display that right when you push play. So I'll just go over to the bottom level in the hierarchy, this canvas item, and uncheck this button right next to the name. And this is active state right here. So I want to make it not active in the scene. Cool. Next thing we'll do is we'll go back to this cube. Let's rename this to win area, I suppose. There are better naming conventions, but I'm just trying to get through this, So let's add that script real quick. And it's a pretty easy script. I'm just going to call it the win condition, or I'll just call it the win script, if that's okay with the jury.
Script.
What?
The Windows script.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft's products are magical.
Okay, so we added it. Let's edit that script. And so with this condition, we don't want to do anything in the update. We just want to do. We want to use another one of these pre-built methods, and this is something that Unity provides. It's the I can probably pull it up with the scaffolding. It's the onTriggerEnter. And so it gives us access to this. And so this basically says if something with a collider enters the game object that I'm attached to, the collider, if there's a collision there, give me that object. And so from this object, you can see what hit it, what was going on. You have access to the collider of.
And you could say, do this stuff, and maybe even do this stuff with this object that we collided with.
Right. So yeah, you can, and you usually you would do some things like you would check the you can check the tag name to make sure it's the right object that's being collided with, but because we only have one object, we only have that sphere, it's not necessary for our purposes.
If I might ask,
Yeah.
is it fair dare to suppose that our sphere object has an on-trigger method somewhere that's telling it to bounce when it hits the platform?
I haven't looked into what the physics material does on the back end. I haven't looked into that at all. I'll have to look into that. But we don't need this start method, so yeah, Levi?
So is it possible that that on trigger would get fired because the square is kind of touching the net in a couple places? Or is it just like after game start will it come in?
That is a good question.
I guess those were different, what was it, colliders or whatever? Like one was the physics collider, one was the mesh collider, something like that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and
I may have misspoke. It might just be anything that has a rigid body attached.
Rigid body, yeah, that's
I-
the word I was looking for.
I'll have to, somebody fact check me on that. Okay, back to this Win script. So we want to have a reference to that Win UI that we just created. So I'll have this public field here that'll store the entire UI, and then inside, whenever we hit this, we just want to find that Win UI, and we want to just set it active. Simple as that. Set active equal to true. Woo-wee. Throw some Kirby boys on there and we'll get started. Okay. So now we can see if that worked. And we'll see if so it's not triggering that, even though it probably is connected to the hitbox or the collider. Yeah, Levi?
So on their documentation, both game objects must contain a collider component. One must have collider is trigger enabled and contain a rigid body. So I think that you were right in that
Okay.
this is for the rigid body type.
For the people on the stream, Levi looked it up. Both objects need to have a collider on them, and one of them needs to have a rigid body attached in order for this to work. So that did not work. So let's find out why. Box collider is trigger. That looks good. Oh wait, it may have worked. It may have worked, we just can't tell because we don't have the Win UI referenced in here. It doesn't have a reference. So as I was speaking in the presentation, here in the inspector is where you reference some objects that need to be referenced in different scripts. So I want to have a reference to this canvas UI element. So I'll drag and drop that into where that is, and that's a representation of what we're seeing right here. And so now we have access to this. It's not null anymore because we referenced it, and we can set it active. And it might have even thrown an error and told us that. No. Okay.
So
yeah.
just by adding that public property to your script, you then got like a little section
Yeah.
of UI that allowed you to drag the game object to it?
Yeah, so Levi says just by adding the public property, you get this little UI element, and that's absolutely true. And based on what it is, changes kind of what you see over here. So if it's X, Y, and Z value, you'll see something more like this. I think that's, if it's a vector 3 is what that's called. Vector 3, you'll see this X, Y, Z. And you can have things like this. So it all depends on what type it is. So we have that, and a lot of people will, in their setup, possibly in the depending on where it's needed in the starter, the awake, they'll check if the reference is null, and if it's null, they'll run one of these slightly more expensive commands where it's just like a search all for this tag, and you can tag it, or there's other ways to find this you can find this
You can
without.
access it programmatically.
Yeah, you can access it through code.
And add the reference yourself.
Yeah, or you can just throw an exception saying, hey, you forgot to reference this, and that'll just help the other developers along. Cool, so let's check that and see if that worked out. So the bounce kind of adds to the difficulty of the game. It did not. Okay, cool. Did I remember to save? So on trigger enter, it is a trigger. When UI set active equal to true. I did save.
You said a minute ago that both objects had to have a rigid body.
No, just one.
Both objects have a collider.
Yeah. So we got a rigid body. We got a sphere collider.
Does our win object have a collider?
Yeah, it's got this box collider. It's set to trigger equals true. Okay. So let's check out the debugger, I guess. I'm gonna just throw a breakpoint on here. The debugger is a little weird. You have to. Oh, I didn't set it up on this PC. All right, we'll just do it the caveman way. Add in print lines. I just want to see if we make it in here. So print is actually new to, I don't know how new it is, but you used to have to do debug.log, and now you can just say print, which is super nice because you can do that everywhere else. Okay. And actually I want to make sure that this object is where I think it is. All right, everything looks good. Let's save the scene and run it. And see if I get that console area. If I don't get that, I'll just probably move on to the so it's not getting there. So that's good to know. So possibly I grabbed the wrong method. Should be on trigger enter. I think that's correct. On trigger enter. It is a trigger. Is this WinScript attached? It is attached. Yeah, of course everything goes wrong. Let me double check real quick on my cheat sheet. One more second. Okay. Box collider is trigger. Yeah. Box collider is trigger. Everything looks good. I'm not sure why that is, so we'll just
Is this script even running? Like, is the script attached properly?
yeah.
I figured it was.
It should be good. We can check that as a latch to shepherd, but if this doesn't work, then I'm just gonna move on to some of the other stuff and maybe we'll figure it out. And maybe we won't. Okay. So all right. That didn't work. We'll figure it out some other time. I was pretty sure I'd be able to debug this live, but it's stumping me for now. I'm sure it's something simple. Another thing.
Box big enough? Like, is it possible that it's missing a box somehow?
We can try that. We can just move this closer inside. Yeah.
Another thing we could conceivably do is give it an outline or some such that we can see it and confirm that the ball is definitely actually going through it.
Yeah, we could do that, but I think I'll just. Yeah. Strange. Oh, okay. Oh, well, that was perfect. That was great. Great debugging skills. Look at that. It's not attached to the game area, so it's not gonna move with
It is, in fact, just completely missing it.
Yeah. So, good call.
That is the caveman way.
Yeah. So we just need to attach that, and what I should be doing is inside that prefab is where we should have added that, but
It'll
be fine for now.
The other levels just don't get a win condition.
Yeah. Okay, now we should see it. Amateur hour. Okay.
Someday we'll get
Yeah.
to see it.
It might go in there. Hey, there we go. Cool. So let's move on from that. And how am I doing on time? It's getting a little late.
You're good to keep going.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to add. I'll run through it really quick. I wanted to add some obstacles because it's kind of boring to just have a ball rolling around, getting into a dot going into a net. Not a ball. It's a dot. But we'll add some obstacles to make it a little more interesting.
We need to be sure we're adding it to the play area object.
Absolutely. And this time I'll do it the correct way. So I'll go into here, and here's where I'll add the cubes. Normally you'll name these better than I have, but I'm running on limited time, so we're not gonna worry about it. So I'll just make these like just kind of obstacles that we can move around with. Let's have that be 3 as well. Make it a little harder. I'm just gonna add a few here, and I want to be able to add some code to make it kind of randomly generate, or not randomly generate, but randomly position itself. So that way it has kind of sort of a random level feel to it every time. So for that to happen, we're gonna add another script. And we'll call this randomize. We'll just call it random. That's fine. Oh boy. Check the window, get more insight. Auto save. Cool, hopefully that's fine. I don't know why that's happening. But I'm just gonna I'm just gonna try that again. Oh, because random's probably a sacred word. That's a no word. That's their word. So randomize belongs to Unity. Is that how you spell randomize? Is it a Z?
Yes.
It is a Z? Is it an S?
Yes.
I don't know which yes you're saying to.
It's a Z.
Okay. Cool. No, that wasn't the issue. It might be. That might be a sacred word as well.
Maybe we just need to pick a word that definitely isn't then.
I doubt Unity stole that. So if it gives me trouble again, then that's definitely not the issue. Yeah, that's not the issue. So we'll work outside of this prefab, and I think that should fix it, unless okay. Actually, this should have fixed it. Yeah. So now we have what we need. But I don't think removing those scripts didn't delete them is the problem. They're still right here. So I just need to delete those. And it's running into an issue with this reserved random class. So that's why it kept running into issues. Cool. We should be good to go now. We can edit the script. Okay. So we don't want the update, but we do want the start on this one, because we want, as soon as it starts up, before the first frame update, we kind of want to initialize it with our own properties. So I want to make a kind of a random transform, so I'll do transform. So as well as game object, how it gives you access to game object, it also gives you straight access straight to the transform. I could do game object dot transform, but this is perfectly fine as well. I want the Euler angles. The way angles like rotation works in Unity, they use quaternions, which I could not explain, and they say not to mess with them directly unless you absolutely know what you're doing. So they give you these Euler angles which use vector 3s, which is more familiar to a human person, which I 100% am. So we want to create a new vector 3. We've got x, y, and z. So we want just to use the regular x. So transform.rotation.x. The y is what we want to change. So I'm just going to do the other one real quick. Transform.rotation.z. Okay, everything's good in there. And so now we want a kind of a random range. 45 degree angles. So how many 45 degree angles is in 360? Pop quiz. Please help, because I don't know. It might be.
8 times 45 is 280. So
360 divided by 45 is 8.
Cool. So because these are squares and they're rotating in the middle, we're only going to use 4 of those because the rest of them are going to be duplicated. So we want a random range 0 to 4. And if there's more to that, then it's fine, if there's duplicates. But and we'll times it by 45 to get that 45 degree angle. Everything in here should be good. Every time we start, we should get a new rotation. So let's test that real quick and make sure it's good. We can just test without getting out of the prefab. So it might have worked, it might have not. I'm feeling like it's not working. So let's check that out. Randomize, please. Script. Save. We got the transform. Euler angles. I'm just for my sanity, I'm gonna switch this to just a random number and make sure that it's doesn't happen to be working. It's this middle one, and its rotation is fine. Wowee, I did not expect this many issues. Okay, so let me just check that I got everything right. Random range 0 to 4 times 45. Translation is x, y, z, new vector 3. It rhymes so you know it's real. Got the Euler angles. Transform Euler angles. Yeah, everything looks good on the scripting end. So everything's in here. It's just the script just should happen on startup. Just gonna blindly test one more time and hopefully it works. And it doesn't. So we can either move on or we can try and fix this. What do you guys think?
I think you're just trying to demonstrate that you can have it do stuff as it loads in when it instantiates.
Yeah, I'll just move over to kind of the next portion. Why though? Oh, I haven't saved this prefab. That could have been it. That was it. Look at that. Killing it. All right. So you can do that. We can apply that randomize me script to the rest of these objects.
Wouldn't it be better to make that into a prefab and then just put several of those prefabs into the play area?
Absolutely. Let's do that real quick. Bam. It's a prefab. Now we can just move those around. Pull those prefabs in. Save that. So now we got kind of a random generated level each time. So the next thing I wanted to do was access that restart button because right now it doesn't do anything. So let's go over to this button. And we have access to these events. So we'll add another event, and I'm just going to throw that in the win script. So we'll drag a reference to the win area, and first let's create it. So here's our win script. We can take back this caveman debugging and add kind of a win, like a restart level function. So public void, I'm just going to call this restart level. So inside here, we have access to the scene manager from Unity. Just gives. Oh no, we need to pull that in first. So let's do that real quick. We're going to be using Unity Engine, Unity Engine dot scene management, and this will give us access to the scene manager. So with this scene manager, we can load a scene, and we're just going to load the scene that we already have open, effectively just restarting where we are. So we'll access that scene manager again, dot get active scene, the scene we're on, and find the name. So this load scene expects a scene name, and we have the active scene. We can just give it the scene name. So now we have a function to call, but we still need to call it. So we'll go back to Unity. We have it attached to the right game object script. So we'll move over here. We'll see the script we want. That's in the functions. We have access to all these different functions, to everything attached to the object that we've referenced. We want this win script, specifically this. Did I make it public? Yeah, it is public.
So
Yeah, saved it real quick. All right. When save this. Oh, I'm getting an error over here. Script's error now. Okay, so that should be better, I think. When restart level right there. Cool. So we'll save that. We'll click this, and then we'll kind of play it and see what happens. Come on, little guy. There you go. So now we got this restart button. If we click it, it restarts. All the obstacles are randomly generated, so we effectively have a new level, and we can just keep on doing that each time. It's kind of endless. So the other, I just wanted to add one last piece, and that's kind of an obstacle that spins. Just uses the update. I wanted to use the update method to have a spin motion. So I'm going to go back into this prefab. This is a weird view. I don't like this view. I guess it looks different depending on how you enter it. Okay, so I want to create another cube real quick. 3D object, cube. I think those are all 3x3s, I believe. This one's going to be a little longer though. I'm going to make it like not that long. We'll make it like 6, 7, 8 even. No, just 7. Cool. So we got this. I just want to have him spin, just kind of as an added difficulty, I guess. So let's add a spinning script. New script, create an add, added it, edit script, and we don't need this start, but we do want to use the update. Inside this update, we're just going to change the y value of the transform. So transform.rotate vector3 dot up. So this vector3 dot up is a shorthand. There you go. So shorthand for writing that. So there you go. Look, I didn't even have to explain it. It explained it for me. We're going to times it by the time.delta time. So you have to do time.delta time in order to get the, because the frame rates are different for each game. So in order to get the right time that you want, you have to, this is kind of the process of that.
Because the frame rate might depend on the machine it's being run on as opposed to what you tell it to be.
Exactly. I think there's more to it than that, but that's kind of the spark notes of it, I believe.
It's just going to vary, and so you have the delta time to get an actual time rate as opposed to just the frame rate.
Yeah. Right. And so I have just an arbitrary number there that looked good when I prepared for this, and believe it or not, I did prepare for this. So everything should be good. Let's see if this is the first one that just works out of the box. It does. So then that kind of moves around. It's hard to get through. So that's all I kind of wanted to show. I'm going to move over to my finished project because it looks a little better. No, it's in scenes. Sorry. Scenes, finished.
Oh my.
So this is kind of what I created. It's depending on if so that randomly generated a lot on oh no, I commented out the random generation on this script because it was causing issues. That's okay. So I just kind of made it a level, so each of those are obviously randomly positioned, but then there's some other elements like that spinning element, and then this wall that stays there, forcing you to either go around this spinner or try to find a way through it. And there it is. You're a winner. You're a .NET master. And that's the basics of Unity. There's our first .NET .NET game. And I wanted to open up the floor to any questions that anybody may have. Levi.
One question I had is what does it look like to programmatically add new game objects onto the board? So like your obstacles, what would it take to dynamically create new ones and add them onto the board to increase the difficulty or something? Right.
It's super easy. The only difficult part about that would be knowing where to position it and making sure that they don't run into each other, right? So you would.
You gotta have some logic in there for that.
You just have to handle from that. But other than that, you just create that prefab, and then you have a reference to that prefab, and you just you use this instantiate keyword.
Is that what you were talking about at the very beginning?
No, actually.
Oh, okay.
There's to instantiate these prefabs you use in instantiate. And did I talk about this? No, I think I added game object. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is how you'll create those.
So what you might do then is make an invisible prefab object that you might call generator, and it just says make a new thing when the appropriate thing happens at the coordinates of this object.
Sure. Yeah. That's definitely a good way to go about it. Just have kind of a factory object that runs through. And what you could do is you could have it walk through the level and then go back and forth, just making sure randomly saying, okay, do I place one or do I just skip this? And then you could use that as your level design. But yeah, it's totally possible, and it's actually pretty simple to do. Yeah, anybody else got any questions?
What does making the release version of the game look like?
That's a good question. So
could you just make a quick release file of what you've got here so that we can see what that looks like?
yeah, I can show you the process real quick. So you go to these build settings, and right now it's built for PC, Mac, Linux standalone application. You also have all of these other options. We can build it with WebGL or have it be a mobile application.
Are
Yep.
there any features to be aware of that will make it so you can't distribute to a specific platform?
So in order to distribute to Android, you have to get all of your S together. S stands for shit. I couldn't stand just saying S. Am I allowed to say shit on the stream? Is that a thing? All right. Why would somebody go on the internet and swear? So
They're not a lizard?
I am not. Who told you that? Who spread that rumor? I'm not a lizard. So yeah, you'll go to these player settings and you'll just have to fill out
Android SDK?
the key store manager, all the all the normal stuff that you have to have for an APK.
Unity features that are only available on a specific platform, or across the board, all of them run on iOS, Android, Windows.
I'm not sure if I understand the question. If I understand it correctly, you're saying if you're porting to Android or iOS, are there some extra things that you can use to build with or turned on? Or
If there's any features of the Unity framework that are platform specific, some built-in mesh thing or something that's only available. That seems like an unlikely one, but I don't know. Just is there anything to be aware of when you're using these built-in features of Unity?
I mean,
only going to be on certain operating systems, or it's just about everything cross-platform?
they strive to be cross-platform.
I'm kind of guessing it really is just all
And so I feel like most things are cross-platform. If you're porting to mobile, you have to watch out for certain 3D objects. You have to watch out for your poly count and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
okay.
those are specific, but they're not really.
So that's like hardware limitations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I imagine it's possible to build game-specific features that might not work gracefully.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, for your
Exactly.
mobile game, you might have a little circular thing to represent a joystick.
Right.
That may not break it on a desktop version, but might just be kind of in the way, for instance.
And-
so you might need to either manually tell it, don't have it for this build, that's just for desktop. Or maybe have a little snippet of code that maybe picks up on what build it is and includes it or doesn't include it.
Yeah, that's something that they often do. It's a little script that they check what it's running on. But yeah, they try to make everything cross-platform. That's why they have this input stuff that can work with joysticks and keyboards and all sorts of stuff like that. And I feel like we were talking about. Oh, I was making a release build. That's what I was doing. So from there, I don't usually build for PC. I haven't built for PC. I've built for Android a lot. And Universal Windows when I was doing a HoloLens app. But I haven't built for PC. But basically, it should give you what you need when you just click build. And you'll want to create like a different folder for it, but can I do a new folder? So then it'll just run all what you need. On Android, it'll build your APK. You can select whether it uses an APK or an OBB. There's just all these sort of settings that you can check depending on what you want. I don't know what. I guess this would just be an EXE then, I imagine. So then you just have this application file that you can run from here. And there you go, made with Unity. I can do my tilting. Whoa, that is slow as heck. So I did some maybe bad coding. So, take that for what it is. No, we can definitely optimize this more later, and it could be that I'm running a full game in 2 Unity instances as well. So
it shows that you can make it into just a standalone exe though, instead of having to run it through the Unity.
Exactly. Yeah, you can, and it's super easy. You just hit build, and it usually works. You can check this development build if you want some debugging features there, but from there it's like out of the box, super simple.
And then you just go and give it all to all your friends.
Yeah, you can just distribute it. You can put it on itch.io or just send them a file and have them hope that it's not a virus. I sent my friend a game one time, and he's like, "Is this a virus? Did you send me a virus?" And I'm like, "Bruh."
Yes.
Like, why you gotta be like that?
Dr. Ford, will I get in trouble for trying to distribute CDs on OCD? This is not a virus.
This is not a virus. CDs, what?
Who has a CD for you these days?
Yeah. Levi.
How much does Unity cost?
Yeah, so it's free personal license, right? And then I had a slide in here about the
It was.
developer license.
It was if it brings in more than 100,000, then it's
So it's
150
based on the revenue of your game.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that what it takes to also get rid of the made with Unity splash screens? and stuff?
Exactly. Yeah. Once you pay for the professional version, you can change the made with Unity to whatever you want, and that's how you get around that and kind of customize it more. But just on the personal version, you'll always see that made with Unity splash screen.
And when it says it's 150 a month, is that just a permanent ongoing fee, or is there a point where the people at Unity will be like, okay, we've gotten the fee for long enough, nobody else seems to be buying your game, it's not a big deal anymore?
No, it's I believe it's a continuing fee.
I would imagine that if you stop paying the fee, you just wouldn't be able to release new builds of your game without that splash screen or something. And
Yeah,
then if
it'll.
you stop paying for it after you've released a game,
I imagine it'll bump
then
you back
it's-
down
it's
to the
not-
free
it's not gonna,
version.
Like, pop up into someone's game. I doubt they like check your license. Well, maybe they do. Maybe every time everyone boots up a game, they check to make sure the game developer's license is up to date.
Okay, personal free plus 400 per seat. Pro. That. And so they all, it's your subscription, standard subscription model with different tiers of things you get from it and what you don't. But yeah, as long as you don't make more than that limit, then you're fine with using the kind of the indie personal version. At least that's how I understand it. But I ain't no lawyer, so.
Well, and if the license is attached to the developer rather than to the game, the expectation might be that it's between all of your games. So if your first game ends up not doing anything more, presumably you've moved on to making some other game that is also pulling in money. Like,
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff between the lines of that. Like, I think it's not if your company. This could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's not if your company. So say you're doing like two separate things in one company, and one of it is making games, and the other is doing something completely different. It's how much, like, I believe it's based off of that section of the company and not the company as a whole. But I'm not 100%
How
on
much
that.
does your company make selling games?
Right. Yeah.
Selling
How much do you make
with you in
using
particular.
our product?
Yeah.
Is what I believe, but I might need to be fact checked on that. I just said fat checked, and most people probably didn't realize until I pointed it out.
I guess it would be assumed as
So I didn't need to do
if
that.
Someone is expecting to make a lot of money, probably would get in contact and work out appropriate contracts or whatever as well.
Yeah. Do we have any questions in the chat?
No, not really. Just kind of some questions.
Chat's just a real big shit.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
is it?
It is.
Not about you.
Oh, I mean,
We
there's
banned Fred
there's.
at one point.
Yeah, we
You
did.
guys banned him.
I did let him back in, but
He was an imposter.
cool. Well, thank you.
He's looking kind of sus, that's for sure.
There is one lizard among us.
For real.